Good evening, everyone. Mr. President, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. You are all very welcome here to this unique event, bringing together competent Toastmasters and 3 Galway clubs for the very first time. I am Carmel Turley, and this was my idea. I'm a proud member of Loughrea and Oranmore Toastmasters Club, and I'm also area director of the 3 Galway clubs for this year. I think you'll all agree that the last few years have been challenging times, but on the upside, it's actually given us time to reflect on what we do want from life. I've actually realised that I want more connection, not just virtual connection, but human connection. And I want community. I believe never has the need been so great for people to speak well and express themselves, whether it's in their workplace, their community, or as advocates. Toastmasters is a community, and we are effective speakers. These times, it's brought me to where we are now. It has basically birthed this event here this evening because I realised what I wanted. I wanted to bring these accomplished Toastmasters together and experience their richness and the adeptness of how they run a meeting. I wanted the 3 clubs to come together in a community and to experience and get to know each other, to connect. You are all in for a wonderful treat tonight. Without further ado, I'm going to call on and welcome up here our immediate past president and immediate past division director, somebody who is witty and a great leader. To open this meeting, Mr. Chris Collins.
Thank you very much, Carmel. I would like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome you all this evening to this meeting, Masters of Speaking. For those who may not know me, my name is Chris Collins and I'm a member of Loughrea Toastmasters, and as Carmel mentioned, I'm the immediate past division director. And this evening I'll be acting as the presiding officer. It's heartening to see so many familiar faces here tonight, but there are also a few that I don't recognise. Are there any guests or first-timers here? Oh, we have a few. You're especially welcome here this evening, and I hope you have a very enjoyable evening. The purpose of Toastmasters is to provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication skills and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. With that in mind, we have a treat in store this evening, with several experienced Toastmasters making presentations. We have members here from all of the local clubs, Galway, Oranmore and Loughrea. It so happens that all of our clubs are celebrating milestone anniversaries this year. Loughrea, our youngest club, celebrates its 5th year. Oranmore are celebrating 20 years, and Galway, our senior club, are hitting 30 years. So well done to you. In that time, clubs have played no small part in helping their members take roles at club, area, division and district levels, and also helping their members progress through to the division finals in our annual speech competitions. With regards to a few items of housekeeping, in case of emergency, you see some emergency exits. Please make your way outside of the hotel before posting to social media. If you need restrooms, they're through this door and to the left. And I'd also ask, if you have a mobile phone, that you put it to silent. we'd like to give all of our speakers here this evening the opportunity of a distraction-free performance. Finally, I'd like to call upon our Toastmaster for this evening. Please welcome former President of the Galway Club and a Toastmaster with over 20 years' experience, the inimitable, the inestimable Mike Joyce.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just for newcomers, this offensive-looking weapon that might get you into trouble in the Mill Street Garda station is a gavel, which usually is given to the person who's speaking at any one time. So Chris has given it to me, and I leave it there until the next speaker arrives up. First of all, I want to thank Carmel for all the effort you put in today, and I especially want to thank you for asking me to perform this role. It's an honour and it's a pleasure, and thank you very much. I do appreciate it. The format of the meeting. So shortly we'll introduce you to a few officers who have roles in the meeting. Then we'll have the 4 speakers. We'll have a break for about 15 minutes, tea, coffee, and some lovely cake. When we come back, then you'll hear the evaluations for the 4 speakers you've just heard. There'll be a session by the Topics Master and our general evaluators. This will all make sense now as we meet these people as we go along. And any of you, the agenda, and for any of you who attends race meetings, you'll appreciate this. The riders are correct on the card. Everything that's on the agenda is as is, no changes. And again, mobile phones. I know Chris has already mentioned it, but if we just make sure they're off completely, that'd be great. Officers. So on your agenda, you'd have seen a few strange-looking names and what do they do. So the first one is our Archonter / grammarian. So I'm going to ask Jenny Doyle to, just for 30 seconds, explain her role here this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. My role this evening, so as well as helping us with our speaking skills, communication is also about listening. So these 2 roles combined help to enhance our listening skills. The role of the counter is to keep an ear out for those filler words, crutch words that we all use. So as, so's, like, and we all use them. It's not to name and shame people, but just the more we're aware of our use of those words, the more that maybe we can reduce our use of them and help our speaking to flow more effectively. And my second part as grammarian is to introduce a word for the evening that we try to use throughout. And again, I'll be listening out for people using that word. So I have chosen auspicious for our word this evening, and it is an adjective showing or suggesting that future success is likely, and I've just put it into a sentence. The first Toastmasters meeting was a very auspicious occasion, and I will also keep an ear out for any interesting use of language throughout the meeting. So, thank you.
A second officer tonight is our timekeeper. Bradley, could you explain your role this evening as timekeeper, please? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So as timekeeper, I'm in charge of keeping track of times for the speakers this evening and giving prompts about the time remaining. There's a light on the column at the back of the room there, and I will show for the 5 to 7 minute speeches, I'll show the green light at 5 minutes, an amber light at 6 minutes, and a red light at 7 minutes. For the 8 to 10 minute speech, it'll be 8, 9 and 10 minutes. For the 10 to 12 minute speech, it'll be 10, 11 and 12 minutes. And for the evaluators, it'll be at 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes and 3 minutes. And then for the table topics, you'll have 2 minutes to speak on a given topic, and at the end of 2 minutes, I'll ring the bell. And if there are any add-ons, I'll ring the bell after 1 minute. Thank you.
Our topics master this evening is Mary Grove. Mary, can you explain your role, which will be in the second half of the meeting?
Thank you, Toastmaster. So topics is one of the most exciting parts of the meeting, where people will work on their impromptu speaking skills and learn how to speak while thinking on their feet. Now, what we're trying to do here is develop 4 key communication skills, which is listening, thinking, organising, and speaking. So, as Brad has already called out, the timings for the topics. Given that there's so many people here today, we won't call on everybody, but you'll get a feel for how topics are run in a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I hope many years ago, I know Francis was here out there that night in Limerick. We had a competition night, and the topics session almost ended up in fisticuffs. The topic was fox hunting, and it got absolutely very, very heated, but I know it won't happen here tonight. And the third officer here this evening is General Evaluator, and our General Evaluator tonight is Seamus Gallagher. Seamus, could you explain your role?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. We have area governors here, and we have people from all over the country, including Westport and in Athlone and Longford as well. I'm delighted to be here. In fact, I had also picked, Jenny, the word auspicious occasion. I had picked that as well, so I have one number on the grammarian. So I'm delighted to be here, and thanks very much to Carmel. It is a great occasion, as she said, to have the 3 clubs together, and we're meeting post-COVID. So my role as General Evaluator, so what is evaluation? Evaluation is feedback. And feedback and evaluation is a central criteria in Toastmasters. Everything we do is evaluated. We evaluate speakers, we evaluate the meeting, and so on. And for the benefit of those who are on the first occasion here tonight, I evaluate the role of the President, the Toastmaster, the Topics Master, the Timer, the Grammarian, and all the evaluators. And that's done at the end of the meeting. So I'm really looking forward to this tonight at this stage, I suppose, this meeting. And thanks again to Carmel for organising it, and hope everybody has a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Seamus. So that's the format of the meeting. They're the officers that will be participating in the meeting. And all going well, we should be all wrapped up by 7 o'clock this evening, everything done, and everybody having had an enjoyable evening. So let's begin with our 4 advanced speakers. Our first speaker, born and reared in Dublin, and in her late 30s moved with her family down to Galway. She's been a Toastmaster for 20 years and twice president of the Corrib Owen Moore Club. She's at the advanced level, as are the other 3 speakers. The objectives are the same for this speaker as for the other 3, but we will, for the sake of good order, we'll go through them. There are only 3. The purpose of this speech is for the master to use the power of reflection on his/her communication skill set. Number 2, what the skill set taught them about themselves. And 3, if and how these skills still apply today, even in a changed environment. The time allowed is 5 to 7 minutes. This speech will be evaluated by Martin Foran. With the speech entitled Finding My Voice, would you please extend a warm welcome to Doreen O'Keefe.
Where else would you meet a group of positive people so interested in self-improvement and development? Where else would you learn from such a diverse group of individuals? Mr. Toastmaster, Mr. President, and fellow guests, I thought this evening that I would reflect on my journey from icebreaker to competent speaker. I also thought that I would ponder on some of my speeches, my roles, and from where I started. How I got from being Toastmaster to being president of the club. Reserved by nature or nurture, I was not one for putting myself or my feelings forward. I found myself overlooked on occasions. My daughter got married in 2002, and it was my wish to speak at her wedding. No one asked me to speak, and my reserve and lack of confidence held me back from pushing myself forward. Disappointed, I promised myself this would not happen again. My fear of facing public speaking would have to be fixed. A few months later, a flyer came in the door about a Toastmasters Club starting in Oranmore. I had heard about Toastmasters, but wasn't quite sure what it was. With trepidation, I went along, listened. I was alone and sat at this auspicious occasion. A colleague from work recognised me, approached, and was very encouraging. He was the president of the new club of Carrick Toastmasters. The club was launched with 19 new members, 3 members speaking at every meeting. My turn was looming. The first speech is the icebreaker speech, where you introduce yourself to the club. Speaking for the first time in public, the last of the new members to speak, was terrifying and thrilling. My speech was 6 minutes long, as required. I was well prepared. I discovered I had a clear and audible voice. My evaluator was very complimentary, as were all the other members. I went home on a high. My inner voice was found. My confidence uncovered. I had found my tribe. The title of my icebreaker speech was Kitten. That's my mother's name. She had a very strong personality. Her widowed sister lived with us. And they giggled and laughed the whole time like schoolgirls. My father would raise his eyes to heaven and say with a stern, "I got 2 from the price of 1 when I married your mother." And they would laugh and giggle even more. I got such enjoyment from writing about my mother that I wrote a speech about my father. He was a great character, the life and soul of the party. Sadly, they both died within 18 months of one another, leaving my mother's sister devastated. I was very busy with my young family, and we had relocated from Dublin to Shannon to Chicago to Galway. I had to make a lot of changes and adjustments in my life, and I had little time to reflect. I found it therapeutic to write a speech about my parents. I wrote a speech about soap operas and was chosen to represent my club in the humorous speech competition. I promptly got laryngitis and lost my voice completely and had to withdraw from attending. It happens to me every few years, but I can't help but feeling the forces were telling me I was not ready for competition. Another speech had me in competition, and this was a speech on a subject that I am very interested in: wine. I didn't win, but I remember meeting members afterwards, and they always remembered me as the lady who spoke about wine. It's not about winning for me. Sometimes when I'm busy preparing for a meeting, my daughter will say to me, "Oh, come on, Mum, come clean. This is really a cult, isn't it?" Table topics can be very intimidating. This is where you're given a topic to speak on for 2 minutes. It's great practice for impromptu speaking, and it's an occasion to give your opinion. And let's face it, everyone's entitled to my opinion now that I have found my voice. In our club, we like to have topics of a light nature, and this sets the mood for the meeting, and it helps warm up the members for when the speeches start. Generally speaking, committees are not for me, but I found I wanted to be involved in the committee and involved in running the club. And I have taken on every role on the committee, including president, twice. It took me 4 years to get from icebreaker to competent speaker. Now, I don't regret that it took me so long because I learned so much along the way. It's not all about speeches. You learn so much by taking on other roles, like listening, evaluating, speaking unprepared. I have met some great people in Toastmasters, and I have made some good friends too. I got involved in the local drama group as a result of joining Toastmasters, and I have been involved in several productions and have even performed in Antibharg. Now that was something I really enjoyed, but I would never have gotten on a stage had it not been for Toastmasters. It mesmerises me sometimes to watch shy members grow to taking on a task that they're asked to do and rising up to the challenge. I have never left a meeting without learning some interesting fact about some amazing subjects. And the subjects that members choose to speak about is thoroughly thought-provoking. And there is no way of knowing what theme the next speech will reveal. I joined Toastmasters a little late in life. I joined it for myself, not for my career. But to be frank about it, you can join at any age. It's never too late to learn a new skill. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Doreen. I was interested while you were talking there about how you struggled with your daughters, to speak at your daughter's wedding. And Carmel and I were talking about this during the week. Both my parents passed away, though they were elderly. They passed away in the last 18 months, and twice I did the eulogy. And I know with absolute certainty I would not have been able to do it were it not for the experience I learned in Toastmasters and the basics of a speech. I would not have been able to do it. So you're correct, it does work. Could I have a time for Doreen's speech, Brad?
7 minutes 25.
7:25. Thank you. Our second speaker tonight hails from County Mayo. This speaker actually, a number of years ago, made a speech where he accused me of suffering from Mayo-itis, which was, being a Galway man, he reckoned that I really wanted to be from Mayo and I loved everything about Mayo, and that was the text of his speech. He was wrong, by the way. He's 10 years in Toastmasters, so just for the sake of good order, we'll go through the objectives. The purpose of this speech is for the master to use the power of reflection on communication skill set, what the skill set taught them about themselves, and thirdly, if and how these skills still apply today, even in a changed environment. The time allowed is 5 to 7 minutes. This speech will be evaluated by Deirdre O'Murrough with a speech entitled A Conversation, all the way from County Mayo. Would you please welcome Pat Copeland. Thank you, Mike.
You say it's not true, but you keep bringing it up.
Might be an element of truth.
Some people, they just want to be from Mayo and they can't get it out of their system. I've been here before, not here in the Salt Hill Hotel, but here in Salt Hill 20 years ago when Mike was moving from 6th class to Toastmasters. I worked down the road building a block of apartments, and for my sins, as well as being the project manager, if you like, I was also somehow morphed into the sales agent, and people would come in trying to buy apartments at the most inopportune times when you're trying to build the damn thing, and somebody walks in and says, "Oh, what size is it?" and so on. So this day, 3 people came in, a mother and a daughter and a little boy, and they wanted to know what size are they and what shape are they. And so I pulled out the clip of drawings and put them up on the table, and I open up. So there's a type A and a type B, type C. Oh, they're not very big, are they? It's to scale. They're not drawn full size, you know. They were just annoying me. And I wasn't cut out for sales, right? So I turned my attention to the small lad and left Mammy and Granny looking through, saying, "Oh, look at it as a dishwasher," or whatever it is. I was talking to the little fella, and he's got a Spider-Man suit on, and my kids were around the same age, so I was into this kind of thing. And he's got these kind of superhero goggles, so they're like 2 giant glass spheres in front of his eyes. And by way of knocking a bit of conversation out of the little fella, I was asking him, that Spider-Man suit, can you shoot the web things out of it? The web things, spider webs coming out. I'm getting that for Christmas, yeah. And then I was asking him about the goggles. I said, those goggles, you can, I bet you can see through concrete walls with those. And can you cut steel with them? And his lip was kind of going down. And then I realised that Mammy and Granny had him each by the hand, and they're marching him out the door, and he's gone. And Frank, the foreman, who's sitting over in the corner eating his sandwiches, says to me, "Oh God, you went awful hard on the little blind fella." And this is a true story. And sadly, I wish it weren't. And there are a few sad aspects to this. The sad thing for little Michael was that the nasty man was making fun of his need for radical eye surgery. The sad thing for me was that this was probably didn't even make it into the 3 most embarrassing things that have happened to me in Salt Hill. And the sad thing for all of us, I think, is that it highlights that most conversations aren't conversations, they're non-versations. They're conversations where people aren't paying attention. And I suppose that you can look at this as there are 3 kinds of conversations. First, there are the non-versations, where Mike talks to me and I'm not listening because it's not very interesting anyway, and I'm waiting to talk to Mike. And then when I start talking, Mike's not listening to me, and it goes on. That's the way Mike and I talk to each other, and it works fine for us. The more astute of you will realise that you can save a lot of time, where Mike and I have just had a traffic accident, and we both talk at the same time. Same thing happens, nobody listens, but we save time because we're both getting what we needed to say out faster. The second kind of conversation is a true conversation, where you and I speak in turn, and one person's talking at a time, but at all times, both people are listening and both people are looking. And that's a true conversation. And I'm sure you've had these because they're very productive. And you could liken those to a car journey where the car has 2 steering wheels, which is a little bit nutty, I know, but stay with me. You get to go to some fairly interesting places, like in a true conversation. People take turns in driving, and it's pretty fluid. We can each take turns in driving because there's 2 steering wheels. You end up in odd locations, but it's fun. And you get to learn things that you might not have learned before. And then the final kind of a conversation is a speech. And a speech is a little bit like that same thing, except there's only 1 steering wheel in the car because there's only 1 person driving. But the important thing for me about speaking is that it involves a way more listening than just from the listeners. It involves the speaker in listening and in looking and in getting feedback from the audience. And I learn really slowly even. I learned that it's an adverb. Apparently you have to have a "ly" at the end. So it has taken me 20 years from my fun time with Spider-Man 20 years ago to really appreciate the importance of likening a speech to a conversation. Because Toastmasters will tell you, when you speak, you need to engage the audience, you need to have eye contact. They'll say you need to read the room. These are all true, but it's a little bit like saying to somebody who's learning to cycle, "No, you need to move your hands back. No, move them forward. Just you go pull over, move them again." When really what you need to say is point at that thing over there. So it needs to become more automatic. In speaking, you should automatically be making eye contact. Telling somebody, "Now look at somebody, look at Martin. No, look at Francis." That's kind of first principles, but what you really should be doing to make it automatic in speaking, I think, is treat it as a conversation. Treat the people you're talking to as co-conspirators. And see that conversation as a thing where, at the moment, they don't all know what I'm going to say, but I should be thinking about how it looks from your point of view. So my suggestions are, before you speak, in drafting your speech and thinking about what you want to speak about, I think it should be structured as a story, like this speech was largely. I'm not talking about Michael's story, that's too painful to go back to. I'm talking about it needs to develop and flow fluidly like a story. That makes it easier to remember because we're all natural storytellers, and telling a story is easy and natural and automatic, whereas giving an essay as a speech is not. And the second thing, as I say, is to see the speech as a conversation. So you shouldn't be regurgitating facts or opinions or ideas. You should rather stop thinking about what you want to say next and start thinking about what is it that your listener hasn't heard yet from you. And that you would say that's the same thing, but it's not, because it puts you looking at it from the listener's point of view. So as you speak, you need to look at the audience. You need to appreciate what the audience is thinking and imagine what is the audience thinking. It switches your viewpoint. It's a very simple thing to do because all you have to do is think, how do I have a conversation with this one person or these 30 people? That's how you have a conversation, I think.
Thank you very much, Pat. And you're right, I have to be a great speaker, a good speaker is a good listener. And one of the reasons I joined Toastmasters was back in 1998, I'll make this very short, I happened to be at a talk given by Senator George Mitchell of the Northern Ireland Peace Talks. And before it all started, I approached him and he signed my book and what name will I put on it? And I said, Mike. So best of wishes, Mike. So an hour later, after the interviews and the speech, I went up to him and I thanked him and he said, you're very welcome, Mike. And I thought, wow. He listened an hour ago to me. He had my name, and that's, you're right, it's a sign of a great speaker that they're actually listening, and that's what Toastmasters does also, listening skills. Could I have a time for Pat's speech, please, Brad?
8 minutes, 23 seconds.
8:23. Our next speaker, even, another advanced speaker, hails from across the bay there in County Clare. Now, he told me many years ago he went to a Cork Toastmasters meeting under the pretext of a blind date, and he never recovered from it. I didn't go any further with that one. I left it at that. He has completed 3 times internationally. He's been a Toastmaster for 35 years. And he would describe himself as a slow learner. Again, advanced. The 3 objectives. The purpose of this speech is for the master to give the power of reflection on his communication skill set, what the skill set taught him about himself, and thirdly, how these skills still apply today, even in a changed environment. The time for this speech is 10 to 12 minutes. It will be evaluated by Siobhan Keenan with a speech entitled The World of Gestures. Would you please welcome James Lennon.
As a Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and especially our guests, I am fully convinced that despite all Toastmasters have written in the last 100 years since their inception, that to generate impact with the spoken word, and let's be honest, that's our gig, generating impact with the spoken word. I am convinced it requires 4 crucial disciplines, or 4 major objectives, if you like. We in the trade, we call them the 4 biggies. Number 1 is very simple: the words, the building blocks, and how we use them. Far be it from me to suggest to anybody in this august group to suggest what words to use for their speech and how to use them. Number 2, vocal variety stroke pause. And it is this particular strategy, vocal variety stroke pause, that confers the real meaning and understanding and sensitivity onto the written page. I am indebted to my president, who enlightened us some time ago that a sentence containing as little as 7 words can have 5 crucially different meanings depending on how we deploy vocal variety. Number 3, sincerity stroke pause. Sincerity is the holy grail of public speaking. If we can inculcate sincerity and passion into our speech, we have arrived. All the great speeches of history have sincerity and passion at their core. Sincerity in a speech has been defined as that hidden force that grabs you by the throat and strikes at you from within. I love that. And fourthly, gestures. And it is the world of gestures, it is gestures that fascinate me from a public speaking point of view. And too often I fear that we neglect, we only give token acknowledgement to the business of lectures, of gestures, and without actually fully realising the potential impact that a good gesture can confer onto what might be normally a very average speech. And tonight, that's what we're going to be talking about, gestures. The trouble with gestures, of course, is that they are never neutral. By that I mean that every gesture is either an aid to the message of the speech or it is a distraction. No middle ground with gestures. It's either good or they are bad. It begs the question, though, what is a gesture? Quite simply, a gesture is every conceivable movement we make up here as part of our endeavour. I have a distinct recollection of, in former years, our amateur dramatics coach reminding us that during a performance we should not move at all unless it is for a reason. And that holds true to us as speakers. And I make no apology for using the word performance. This is our Carnegie Hall. This is our Metropolitan Opera House. This is our space. And we should milk it for all it is worth. The manual suggests that gestures should be expansive. The whole world is your oyster. I can take that. And they suggest that gestures should be energetic. I can take that also, provided it doesn't extend to some young fellow up here hopping around like a madman, which I believe to be a distraction. I also feel, in my years of experience, that we don't give enough credence to facial gestures and facial animation. because facial gestures have the power to generate significant meaning. The smile, the frown, the pursed lips, the raised eyebrow, and of course, eye contact. Eye contact is a gesture. Frederick Douglass, 19th century black American, born into slavery, but somehow survived to become one of the great speakers of his age, or any age. He befriended Daniel O'Connell and came to Ireland, and both spoke together in public to great acclaim. But Frederick Douglass had no gestures but one: eye contact. Frederick Douglass was gifted with the possession of an enormously pair of eyes. He had huge eyes, and he used them to great effect. You did not dare nod off in a room where Frederick Douglass was speaking, so riveting was his eye contact. We should also be careful to make sure that our gestures match the sentiment of the dialogue. For instance, if I were to say, the mother-in-law died last year, but she left me a small fortune in her will. But how I miss the passing of that great lady. Does that look like I'm seriously mourning my mother-in-law? Don't think so. The trouble is, when gestures contradict the dialogue, the audience always believe the gestures. And in an odd way, it is this anomaly, to my mind, that reinforces the inherent power of gestures. Because no matter how eloquent the dialogue is, if it contradicts the message of the speech, if both contradict one another, the audience will always believe the gesture. Consider then how good our speech could be if for somebody we were able to use a complimentary gesture to our dialogue. Most fascinating, of course, though, to my mind, is the timing of the gesture. Now, the manual frequently refers to the well-timed gesture, but they're never explaining, to my mind at least, what a well-timed gesture is. We can take it as read that the well-timed gesture means that the gesture must precede the relevant phrase. Gesture first, relevant phrase afterwards. A young fella came into our office the other day wearing an earring. I don't think we should say he came into our office the other day wearing an earring. In other words, the gesture first, the relevant dialogue afterwards. And the trouble is, when the gesture follows the dialogue, it can sometimes make the speaker decidedly foolish. A figure of fun, even. That's what happened to Arthur Scargill. Most of you are too young to remember him, the leader of the coal miners' union, had many a spat with Margaret Thatcher. Brilliant man, great speaker, could not time the gestures. For my sins, I sometimes give public speaking lessons to students, and during one such session, a young fellow from the back of the class, totally confused, put up his hand Which comes first again, Sally says? Is it the word or the action? Now, I happen to know that this young fella's mum was in the choir. Actually, she conducted the choir. So I teased him a little bit and I said, Johnny, when your mum is conducting the choir, does she set the ball rolling or do they start singing first? Oh, no, sir, he says. She starts them off with a small stick, he says. She's the boss. Well, now, Johnny, gestures are exactly the same. The gesture, the baton first, and then the music and the dialogue afterwards. The fact is that musical conduction is probably the most perfect gesture we will ever encounter. And I say that for a number of reasons. Firstly, a lot of energy is exerted. It is estimated that a conductor conducting one of the major symphonies during the course of the conduction is capable of losing 1.5 pounds in weight, as much as a jockey in the Grand National. Racing again? Touche. They never look at their notes, the good ones at least. Eye contact is established with every corner of the orchestra. Their facial expressions can be dynamic and dramatic. But most significantly, the timing is always willed, with the baton always ahead of the music. Unless, of course, you're Jacqueline Dupré. Jacqueline Dupré, one of the most gifted cellists of our age, who died tragically young. And there's a celebrated recording of her doing her favourite piece, the Elgar Cello Concerto, with the London Philharmonic being conducted by none other than Daniel Barenboim, who happened to be her husband, except that she wasn't taking any dictation. There she was, her eyes closed, in a trance, literally wrapped around the cello, and she belting out music from the very soul. Music that would make her heart ache. Few noticed in the audience that she wasn't following strict tempo her husband, but nobody gave a damn. Everybody was transfixed with the passion and sincerity of the performance. But hold on, James. You was not supposed to be talking about gestures, and here you are meandering into a different one of the disciplines, sincerity, passion. And so what? The fact is that sincerity through passion, as part of a performance, trumps everything else. In the audience, it might disturb us. It might make us weep. But deep down, we love it. But time moves on. Gesture before the dialogue. And there's going to be no further discussion about sincerity and passion. Well, at least not tonight, Josephine. But maybe sometime in the future. Who knows?
Thank you very much, James. And as you were speaking, well, you brought it up in the middle of your speech and then you wrapped up with the sincerity and passion. Some of you, I keep bringing this example up, but it's very apt. There was a guy in the Galway club, Brendan Gannon. Some of you will know him, and most of you won't. But Brendan's passion in life was fly fishing. And I challenge you to think of any more boring sport or pastime than fly fishing. But Brendan's sincerity about fly fishing and his passion for it came through. every time. And he wasn't a demonstrative speaker, very mild, monotoned, but he loved fly fishing, and the passion came through, and every time he spoke, it worked. So you're dead right, James, it does work. Could I have a time for James's, Bradley, please?
15 minutes, 6 seconds. 15.
15. Not bad. Our fourth and final speaker hails from Birmingham, but like St. Patrick, he's one of our own now. Been here that long. The first time actually I met, heard or saw this next speaker, both of us were in a humorous speech contest. I think it was in Oranmore. And he spoke before I did, and his speech. Now bear in mind, the judges give 15% of the marks on audience reaction. His speech was so good, I was laughing so much, one of my colleagues beside me nudged me and said, look, you're giving this guy extra marks here. You're not doing yourself a favour. Advanced speaker, no doubt. Absolutely, he sure is. Again, the three objectives. The purpose of this speech is for the master to use the power of reflection on communication skill set. Number 2, what the skill set taught them about themselves. And 3, if and how these skills still apply even in a changed environment today. Time allowed 8 to 10 minutes. Evaluation will be by Francis Gagan with a speech entitled The Ringer. Would you please welcome Rob Partridge.
Thank you very much. When I'm out and I start talking about Toastmasters, my husband pipes up and says, he's talking about that cult, he's a ringer. As in, I didn't need to go to Toastmasters because I already had the confidence to speak in front of people. And he's right, I did. But I'd been to a stage school. I'd performed countless times on stage, on TV. It didn't bother me standing up here talking in front of people. But I had absolutely no idea how to do it properly. Because delivering a speech is very different to performing on a stage in a part where you have a director telling you what to do. So I joined Toastmasters, and Toastmasters taught me 4 different skills. It taught me how to structure a speech, how to do it properly. It gave me presentation skills, to stand up here and be able to do this and have it on the screen. It taught me about impromptu speaking. And it taught me leadership skills. Because I don't know if you noticed on the screen, the tagline for Toastmasters isn't where public speaking is done, it's where leaders are made, which is what we do. We teach leadership. Now, public speaking is part of that. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests, I want to go through these 4 points and show you exactly what I got from it and how it works. So speech structure, everybody knows that a speech needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I know that. It's basic storytelling, and you've heard tonight how a speech is a performance and a story. But do I really know how to start it properly? Because the start has to be powerful. It has to draw people in. They want to listen more. The middle has to be full of facts and information, because that's what you want people to hear. But what if you're putting too much information in? Or what if you're not putting enough in? And your end wants to make people wanting more. You need to think about the ideas of this law they call primacy and recency, where this states that the thing you hear first, you remember longest, but the thing you hear last, you remember first. So you're going to remember for the longest time that my husband calls me a ringer and thinks this is a cult. He's wrong on both accounts. What you're going to remember first is what I tell you at the end. Fingers crossed, if I've done this right. So presentation skills. This is insanely important in so many different aspects of our life. For work, I have to give presentations. For the things I do outside of work, I have to give presentations. And I used to turn up to these presentations and think I was doing a really good job, because at the end of my presentation, everybody would applaud and say, well done. It turns out they weren't doing it because I was good, they were doing it because that's what you're supposed to do. Because my presentations used to go like this. I'd stand with my back to the audience and my slides would be filled with text that I'd just read out, and people were no longer listening to me, but instead reading the text on the screen or looking at pictures that had often got the watermark still in it or were blurred. I had lost my audience. They were no longer paying attention to me. They were reading everything that was on there. I was no longer important, and there was no point in me being there. Toastmasters taught me that now all I need to do is just put simple facts up on there. One word that more often than not is used as a hint for me, so that I know what I'm going to speak about next, and so that I can do this without having written notes. Now, don't get me wrong, I love notes. All the great speakers use notes. So if you're going to give a speech, don't think that you have to remember it off by heart. You can still come up here with your notes. Yet if I hadn't joined Toastmasters and I was asked to speak at an event like this, I would have been at home rehearsing every night to learn this speech off the top of my head. But with Toastmasters, I know I don't have to. It didn't make any difference. The third thing, and one of the most important things that Toastmasters has taught me, is impromptu speaking. This helps so much when it comes to interviews. You can prepare for a job interview as many times as you want, and I guarantee you at some point there's going to be a question you weren't prepared for. With the table topics that we'll have later, you will learn the skill of how to answer an impromptu question. You'll learn different things like taking a pause, thinking about what you've said, because just because someone's asked you a question doesn't mean you need to give them an answer right there and then. You can have a few seconds to think. You can let your brain relax into why they're asking this question. This, to me, has been an incredible skill, and when I get on to the next one, you'll find out exactly why. Leadership. This has been the biggest thing Toastmasters has taught me, and I didn't realise it was happening. I have been the president of 3 different clubs. I've been the area director. I've been a division director. That's all within Toastmasters. And within Toastmasters, I was taught how to take on these different roles. But I was also taught how to do them outside of Toastmasters. So how to do them at work. So when I'm in work and I have to run a meeting, I know how to do it because Toastmasters taught me these leadership skills. In 2017, I was the chairperson of Galway Pride. Galway Pride is the longest running continuous Pride event in Ireland. It wasn't the first, but it's the only one that has gone on every single year. This year, in 2023, they'll be celebrating 34 years of Galway Pride. But as I said, in 2017, I was the chairperson. And I had the honour of having over 3,000 people walk down the streets for our parade. That was the highest number in the history of Galway Pride. Now, it wasn't because I was chairperson, it was because I had a great team and I knew how to lead them. I didn't sit there taking all the jobs on myself. I handed jobs out. I fed back to people how things were going. We had great, productive meetings, and it's all from these skills that Toastmasters taught me. So last year, I was chairperson again, and we had over 4,000 people, making it again the highest turnout ever in Galway's history. And once again, I'm not saying it was because I was chairperson, because we had a team of 16 who all worked very hard to put this event on. But I am going to take the praise and say I led that team because Toastmasters taught me how to do it. Toastmasters taught me how to do that in that team. But I've done it with other teams as well, and I have absolutely loved it because I can now, with the experience I got from sitting at this top table, from standing behind this podium, from sitting in that audience, has allowed me to be able to feel comfortable and confident to do these things. And without Toastmasters, I absolutely would not have had that skill. Toastmasters teaches various things. The building confidence, as I said, I didn't need it because I already had the confidence to stand in front of people, but I guarantee you I was doing it wrong. Because when I had the confidence to stand in front of people, it was because a director had told me where to stand and how to say what I needed to say. Now, I don't need that director. Toastmasters taught me to become a more effective speaker, and I hope that's shining through. I hope those of you that knew me when I first started in Galway and then Oramore and then Loughrea have seen how I've progressed. Because my icebreaker... Hello, I'm Rob. This is my icebreaker. This is the first thing I've ever done. That's exactly how my icebreaker went. It was awful. It was atrocious, because that's what I thought we were supposed to do. It's improved my presentation skills. I think it has. It's improved my leadership skills, absolutely. It's built social networks, and it really has. I have made great friends through Toastmasters, but I've also made friends with people I can call on for favours or to help me out with certain projects. There are members at Loughrea who I have said, I'm thinking of starting this up, will you be part of it? And they've said yes. It's helped me meet professional goals, and it really has. I have done well at work because I have been able to answer these impromptu questions, because I have been able to say, this is what we need to do, and have the knowledge to be able to back it up, because Toastmasters taught me how to do that. With regard to the impromptu speaking, again, going back to Pride, one of the things I had to do was appear on the radio, and they don't tell you what they're going to ask you. So I had questions fired at me about how Pride was going, and I was able to answer them with confidence and with ease. And it is all thanks to Toastmasters. And I promise you, if I can do it, so can you. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Rob. And I think it was after Doreen's speech, I mentioned how Toastmaster helped me with the eulogy of my parents, who passed away very quickly and very close to each other. And that's exactly what I meant, Rob. The basics of the speech. People said to me afterwards, how would you do that? That was lovely, that was perfect. The emotional side of things was difficult. But when put my Toastmasters hat on, beginning, middle, end. It could have been simpler, but I wouldn't have done that without Toastmasters, Rob. Could I have a time for Rob's speech?
9 minutes, 47 seconds. 9:47.
9:47. Okay, we're now at the break, the tea and coffee time. So it is now 10 past... Well, just to alert the newer people, not only is it just tea and coffee time and cake time, but the speeches that you've heard, the 4 speeches you've just heard, the evaluators will speak privately to the speakers during the break, just to, a one-to-one, and then they'll give their public evaluation when we come back. So that will take place during the tea break. It's now 10 past 6, 25 past 6, 15 minutes, and we'll resume again. Thank you very much. I shouldn't say this, but Pat, my 4 sons, for Christmas, gave me a Ballinrobe Racecourse membership card for the year. So that actually, it hammers it home. I do have Mayo-itis. Ballinrobe Racecourse, there you go. How cool is that? Before we go to the evaluators, I'd just like to acknowledge somebody here very, very quickly in the audience. This gentleman recently won the Junior Chamber International World Debating Final, and I think it's only proper we should acknowledge him at this very auspicious occasion here this evening. Micheál Gallagher. Micheál, well done. Now we have our 4 evaluations. The first evaluation will be given to us. It was Doreen O'Keefe's advanced speech entitled Finding My Voice, and this will be evaluated for us by Martin Vaughan. Martin, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Tonight, on this auspicious occasion, I have the pleasure and the honour of evaluating Doreen's speech. It is always interesting how meetings start, and I think this was a wonderful start to the meeting and a wonderful speech to start with. Doreen's speech was entitled Finding My Voice, and the purpose, which our Toastmaster read out earlier, but I will repeat it, the purpose is for the master to use the power of reflection on his or her communication skill set, what this skill set taught him or her about themselves, and if and how these skills still apply today, even in a changed environment. And I thought that, Doreen, you gave us a masterclass in an opening speech. Your speech was engaging from the very start. You started with a question. Where would you find a group like this all coming together? And that's a very valuable question for all of us. Where else except in Toastmasters? It was a great beginning to a great speech. And Doreen, you drew us in with a story. You told us the story of your development through Toastmasters. You could have just listed chronologically what happened, but no, there was a story of how you went from being, as you described yourself, reserved, or naturally reserved, to the person who stood up here. And I would defy anybody to tell me that if a stranger walked in here today and said, pick out the reserved one in the audience, they would have picked Doreen. I don't think they would have. And what that shows us is that the skills you developed here have allowed you to overcome a natural reservation to become the impassioned, sincere speaker you are. It was a great use of all the skills that an experienced Toastmaster would be expected to have. Gesture, eye contact. What I really liked particularly was where you kept the top table in view. They can often be forgotten when we're looking down at our audience and all around. The top table, they're audience members as well. That was really, really good. But they're all there. Voice, vocal variety, gesture, eye contact. And that eye contact meant that we were all kept engaged with the story, which is really, really good. What I also liked was that you drew us in with that story. And it was relevant to the audience, particularly those who are new members or even guests. Why would we join such an organisation but to go from where you started from to where you've ended up? Everybody here could be inspired by that story. We can always develop new skills. Even experienced Toastmasters can find an aspect of themselves they want to work on, and they can do that. In terms of recommendation, I really enjoyed your story. It was well-paced. There was lots of interest in there. I would have liked to have seen it improved even more so by use of more pauses, to give us a little bit of time to reflect on what you just said, the important lesson you gave us, particularly the humour. I really liked the humour you brought into the speech. I would like a little longer to dwell on that and to dwell on your message. Overall, it was a wonderful speech, a wonderful way, as I said at the start, to start a meeting and to start a story, or start a speech. I look forward to you developing your skills even further, and I was really delighted that all the good things I've heard about you over the years proved to be true. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Martin. Could I have a time for Martin's speech, Brad, please?
3 minutes, 9 seconds.
3 minutes and 9 seconds. Our second speech tonight was given to us by Pat Coakley. The speech was entitled A Conversation, and to evaluate that, could I call on Deirdre O'Murray, please?
Top table, fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests, and especially you, Pat. Pat delivered a very interesting, thoughtful speech and reflective speech tonight. He met the 3 objectives that have been mentioned several times tonight, and he used and dotted his speech with humour all throughout it, including the banter between the top table and himself. What I thought he excelled at was telling a story and tying it in a conversational style into his journey. To quote himself during the speech, it was easy, natural, and automatic. The strongest skill that he demonstrated today happened when he got into the meat of things. Now, at the start, when he was delivering the first part, he had his eyes to the ground. He did not make much eye contact, and he spoke down. A little bit difficult to hear it. But then when he got into the meat of the matter, his whole body language changed. He made eye contact. I don't know if he put his feet shoulder distance apart, but it felt like he did. He made eye contact. He connected with the audience. Even he used the phrase, we stew people, or something to that effect, brought the audience in together. The most memorable impact and takeaway that I felt he had, was when he said, what is it that the listener hasn't heard from you? How do you switch your viewpoint? How are you taking in? How are you the listener when you're speaking? One of the things I should have mentioned earlier is his title. I love the title. A speech, a conversation. A speech is a conversation. Or a speech, as he corrected me in our little chat, a speech should be conversation. So what I would like Pat to work on is, I think, the command of the floor. It was so effective during the speech when he went from looking down and not making eye contact, as in the speech, the start of your Toastmaster journey, to taking up space and looking at things. I think that makes such a huge difference. He was very good at the gestures during it. I would like to see more gestures, more purposeful gestures. So to move with purpose, to take command of the floor, to make the eye contact that he started to make, that he made in the body of his speech. So very well done. Overall, very enjoyable, reflective speech. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Deirdre. Could I have a time for Deirdre? Brad, please.
2 minutes 27.
2 minutes 27. Thank you. Our third speech tonight, again advanced, was given to us by James Lenan. It was entitled The World of Gestures. And to evaluate that speech, could I invite Siobhan Keenan to the podium, please?
Fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests, and especially James. Wow, this is our Carnegie Hall. What an amazing way to look at this experience of Toastmasters. James gave us a very informative and entertaining speech tonight, and I have the pleasure of evaluating it. I learned a lot tonight, actually, from James's speech. What did I learn? I learned that gestures are never neutral. We should never move unless for a reason. So it was lovely to be reminded of this. I learned that gestures are best used when they're expansive, energetic. The credence for facial gestures. I was saying to James, I had never considered eye contact a gesture, but I do now after tonight, and I understand it better. It was great the way you emphasised how gestures should match the sentiment of our dialogue. So what did I like about James's speech? Well, I really liked your pace and your pause. They were fantastic. I also liked the examples that James gave when he was talking about how gestures must be congruent with our words. That image of him smiling, talking about his the death of his mother-in-law is quite unforgettable. So we see the impact of that on us, and I love the humour that you used. What I especially liked was, I think tonight James walked the talk. He was an example of what he spoke about when he spoke about how to generate impact with the spoken words, the words he used, the vocal variety, the pause, the sincerity and the passion all came across. So the fact that you were an example of all of that was absolutely wonderful. What would I recommend? Well, James is a very, very advanced speaker, so I have 35, no. I have 3 recommendations. The first recommendation is, James, I would have got into it a little bit quicker. So it's to do with the opening. I would have started with a question like, how can we generate impact with the spoken word? And then just get straight into it. Secondly, the rule of 3. We're all so familiar with the rule of 3 in Toastmasters. I was surprised that you had 4 points about how to generate impact. So what I thought you could have done maybe was have had 3, the words, the vocal variety, the sincerity, passion, and then kind of say, but what I really believe is it's all about gestures. And rather than say that was a 4th, it would have kind of given it a place of its own. So and the third thing was, I suppose just like I'm doing here, you were talking about gestures, but maybe it was because I was sitting so close to you, I couldn't see the full extent of your gestures. So I would recommend maybe stepping away from the podium a little bit more. And at one stage, we're talking about there being no middle ground, and I could see your hand doing that, but it would have had more of an impact if you had done it out here. That's my own personal view. So James, you were a little bit over time, and I know that I said that your pace and pause were absolutely fantastic, but I think that if you just maybe cut the pause a tiny little bit, and with all of those really, really good points, the examples, the stories, all of that, what I remember tonight is that eye contact being a gesture. I remember that expression about this being our Carnegie Hall, so fantastic. It'll make me more excited to be up here again. And also that analogy about the conductor of music. That is just so beautiful. So James, well done. And I'm going to try and use a gesture first. If you put all of that into action next time, who knows?
Thank you very much, Siobhan. Siobhan's time, Brad?
4 minutes, 1 second.
4 minutes, 1 second. Our fourth and final speech was given to us this evening by Rob Partridge. The speech was entitled The Ringer, advanced speech, and here to evaluate that is Francis Gagan.
Fellow Toastmasters, and especially Rob, this was a speech for the occasion. I liked the title in that it was a mystery, and it brought humour into the beginning of the speech with his being accused of being in a cult. What I liked was the vocal variety, the gestures, the story. In one of our meetings when I was being very sarcastic about Pathfinders, I asked, who joined Toastmasters to be a leader? Rob put up his hand. I had no notion. I think by default you become a leader in Toastmasters, but I've kind of got a mental thing, but that's not your speech. Your speech brought us on a journey through what you learned from Toastmasters, which was the objective of the evening. You had vocal variety, you had clarity of words, you had pace, and you had a story within that. What I would, and you also learned to use this thing. And I felt my suggestion would be, because you had that in your hand, you could have used more of the stage. The other thing I would question and put for a challenge is, was anything gained by us reading that? I feel that if the words are spoken, do they need to be reinforced with that? Though I know it's a skill and I wished I had that skill, but for that. But other than that, and that might be just a personal thing with me, I feel it was a very well put together speech, very well presented, and it gave us your personal thing of what you learned, and especially the leadership aspect, which was obviously so important to you in Toastmasters, and which I hadn't given very much consideration to. So thank you. Thank you, fellow Toastmasters.
Thank you very much, Francis. And Francis' time, Brad?
2 minutes, 27.
And you stole my pen also as well, Francis.
You always give me a pen.
2:27.
Yeah.
Thank you. I better put it into my pocket this time. Okay. On to more, well, slightly more humorous section of the evening, our topic session, and I will leave the explanation of this role to our topics master tonight, Mary Crowe.
So, like I said earlier, we're going to practice our impromptu speaking and thinking on our feet here this evening. So, I'm going to focus, I suppose, on the people who haven't had a chance to speak yet, and also I'm going to reduce add-ons to maybe 2, just to get through some of the topics and make it interesting for everybody. So I'm going to kick off with Carl from the Westport Club and ask Carl, what makes you smile? Where is Carl?
Madam Topics Master, fellow everybody, what makes me smile? A smile costs nothing, and it gives much. That's the beginning, the first 2 lines of a poem that I used to know off by heart, and I've now forgotten it. However, the sentiments are the same. I very much believe that it's important when I go for a walk, if I walk past somebody, I usually smile and I say hello. And there's a connection there. A few weeks ago, I was in London and I did a long walk along the towpath of the Thames. And I could not wait to get back to Clifton after that, because nobody looked at you, nobody smiled, nobody took any notice other than walking along like this. And a smile costs nothing. It gives much. So if you can't give a smile, if they can't give a smile to you, then you give a smile to them.
No add-ons there. We'll move on. Mary Carr. It's Mary here. You'd want to be living under a rock for the last few weeks. I listened to her that the most talked about book is Spare by Prince Harry. However, Mary, what's your favourite book recommendation?
Thank you for the topic. That's a hard one. Your favourite book, because there are so many books that are favourites, I suppose. Stuck for a second just to think. Well, a book that has been a favourite of mine, I like all the classics, I must say, and enjoy them. And I've reread books. And I think when I reread a book, I get more out of it the second time round. So what is my favourite? But that's a very hard one. I also read, so I suppose I can tell you that. I read plays because I'm involved a lot in drama and directing plays. So I read plays very much. And during the lockdown, we read lots of plays on Zoom to make ourselves familiar with them. And it kept us going. Every single Wednesday night on Zoom, we read a play. And it was very interesting and it was very enlightening, and it also reminded us of plays that we had done already, but enjoyed all over again because we were reading them, sharing it on Zoom. So the play I enjoyed most, I think, was Lend Me a Tenner, which is a farce, and is absolutely daft, like all farces are. And I think we laughed and laughed and laughed about that, even though we were just on Zoom, we were all in our own homes looking at the printed word. But was that a bell? That bell, am I up?
Add on over here. Pat, is it? Thank you.
I'd like to put forward a candidate for the most useful book of all time that I know about. And what it is a book called The Art of Thinking Clearly. And it's written by Rav Dobelli. And what's really great about it is it's short. And the chapters are even shorter, otherwise they wouldn't all fit in any more than one of them. And they're maybe 3 pages long. And I know you don't know what size these pages are, so that's kind of irrelevant. But you can read a chapter in a few minutes, and each chapter deals with an aspect of thinking that we get wrong, that we've, through evolution or for various reasons, we have thinking errors. And he then will give an example. And the one that comes to mind, which I find very useful, is apparently this was developed, this idea was arrived at and was used during colonoscopies. That's probably somebody ringing a bell just saying, get that guy off the stage. And what they found was that when somebody was kind of half asleep, half awake, or any kind of painful, unpleasant thing, was what Rob referred to. There's a peak end rule, where you remember the highlight, the most, in this case, painful, or in a case of a holiday, the most enjoyable evening of your 2 weeks in Torremolinos. You remember the best night and you remember the last night. So you should save about 3 nights worth of holiday budget for the last night, because that's the one that you'll remember. And likewise with colonoscopies, you want to make the painful thing not at the end. And they deliberately do this with colonoscopies. You don't believe this, do you? But they do. If it's very painful towards the end, they still hang around a while longer saying, oh, we still got stuff to do. And then you don't remember it as being as painful, and then you'll agree to go for the next one. Apparently, so I hear. And where this is useful, I'm sorry, I'm running way over time, but I don't care, is if you're washing your dog, as I did this morning, because he got really covered in muck, and washing his head is the part that's really painful. So think colonoscopy, dog. I didn't give the dog a colonoscopy, but he really hates having his head washed. So I always do that kind of, not first, but definitely don't do it last, because you'll never get the little bugger back into the bath again. So it's a useful book, The Art of Thinking Clearly. It doesn't cover dogs, and it doesn't really cover colonoscopies. It's written by Ralph DeBelly. Go and buy it. You can really buy it.
How do you follow a colonoscopy? I can't. But for me, when I think of a book, The Colour Purple comes to mind. And I can't remember even if I've read it. I know the movie, I know I've read the book, but it's been so long that the only concept that came from the book for me was the idea of the colour purple. And for me, my hugest takeaway from this book, which is why I want to give it to you today, is that the author, Alice Walker, gave one of the characters the idea of the colour purple being where our spirituality is, where our soul is, where our God is. God wasn't a man in a chair, he wasn't white, he didn't have a beard. He was in, or she, or it, was in the colour purple in the field. And that's my book.
Gosh, we're getting warmed up now, aren't we? So, Dolores, often we think about and look at people and go, gosh, don't they have a great life? Wouldn't I love to be them? Who would you like to be for a day?
I'm trying really hard to be me. And sometimes I'm not the me I want to be. I'm short-tempered, and I'm abrupt, and I'm rattled. But that's not the real me. The real me is a lovely person. You'd love to meet her if I could get her to come along one of these days. The real me is just so compassionate and full of love and warmth and affection. But the me that comes out most days is an efficient person who can get things done, who can deliver messages clearly, and who can put people on the spot. But that's not the real me. The real me is the lovely, lovely girl. She's also about 40 years younger than this version. So if I had a whole day to be the person I really want to be, I would be Dolores Brady version 2. And anybody who refers to themselves in the third person and includes their name is a fake. And never believe a word they say. We discovered that about P. Flynn when he started talking about P. Flynn. And that's one of the yardsticks I use. So I'm fairly real. I think that is the first time ever I have used my name when I've been talking about myself. So I'm working really hard on finding a gentler, easier, calmer, less efficient version of me. And I'm getting there. And I cannot believe that the timer has given up the job.
15 seconds to go.
Keep digging. But if I had the opportunity to spend a whole day
being somebody else. I'd be the nicer version of me.
So for our final topic tonight, Siobhan. I was watching the darts very strangely this Christmas, and before I dipped in and out of it, but this time I really got hooked on it, and I was absolutely blown away by the final. It was a fantastic event. What is the annual televised sporting event that is an absolute must-see for you? Where is Siobhan? Oh, this is Siobhan.
Well, it's funny that you should mention darts because I have two sons at the moment who are darts mad, and they've been watching the darts. But not only have they been watching darts, we have a dartboard, and they've been constantly firing darts. That dartboard just happens to be positioned just outside of my room, my bedroom. So I have to knock on my door to come out of my room because I hear the ping, ping, ping of these darts, and it's on the way to the toilet as well. So they just can't go from one room to the next without picking up the darts and throwing them. And I think the whole spectacle of playing darts now is just amazing. It's fascinating. I was fascinated to find out that people could sit and watch people play darts, but I did it at one stage, and the whole excitement, the music of it all was just really fascinating. If I was to choose a sport that would be the highlight of my year when I was younger, it probably was the All-Ireland finals in football and hurling. I was into that a little bit because I had 5 brothers, so it was hard not to be. But I think today, and it's not an annual event, unfortunately, it's every 4 years, I believe, the World Cup. The World Cup soccer final of just over a month ago. Hands up who saw it. Wasn't it just unbelievable? It was amazing. I know soccer is not the most exciting sport, but I think I love watching the World Cup, and I love getting excited about it, picking a team, picking names out of a hat, and just supporting a team and going with that. So it's not very exciting, but that's what I would go with. Thank you.
So earlier on, our Toastmaster challenged you to think of a sport more boring than fly fishing. Darts, tennis, golf, cricket, I hate them all. I find them incredibly boring. But the one annual sporting event I will watch every year without fail, and I will book time off work to do this, is the Eurovision.
When you bring up the idea of picking one annual sporting event, it reminds me of a story of my brother when we were growing up. Now, I'm one of 4. There's 3 girls and a boy. And my brother very much likes sports. He was, in fact, a Liverpool fan. Liverpool was everywhere in his room. It was red. He had all the articles up. His curtains were red. The light shining through was red. But he loved any sport at all. Snooker, football, anything. And for 2 to 3 years, he had my mother convinced. This is only on once a year, he'd say. It's only on once. This is the championship. And by God, he got the television. The next month, this is only on once a year, he'd say. Oh no, it's only on once. It's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen for 12 more months. He'd get the television. The television was on. 2 years in, we logged it. We clocked it. We said, hang on. Soccer happens every year. Snooker happens every year, and now we're adding in Olympics every 4 years. Then you have the World Cup, and. So, the sport that I like to watch every year is Star Trek.
Thank you, everybody. That ends our topic session. I'll hand it back to
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mary, and no punch-ups. That's great. 2 officers now that we're going to call upon for their reports for the evening's events, and the first one is the R-Counter/Grammarian report from Jenny Doyle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I just want to thank everybody for trying to use the word of the evening. So auspicious was used 4 times, and twice in my chat with somebody over coffee, so I'm going to chalk those up as well. And one of the bits of English that really stuck with me this evening was from Carol: a smile costs nothing and gives much. I think that's a saying I will definitely be taken away with me tonight. In relation to filler words, it was excellent, so I would like to give a shout out to Brad, Doreen, James, Rob, Francis and Dolores Brady for no ums or ahs or filler words whatsoever, and everybody else, there was no more than 5 of those filler words that I caught from anybody, so it was a great night, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jenny. And our final officer tonight, report, General Evaluator, Seamus Gallagher.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, we had a great evening and very, very enjoyable. Trying to read my notes and I used different colours paper to try and help to get through the process. So, as I said at the beginning, evaluation is very important in Toastmasters. And what is evaluation is really it's what we did well, what we could improve, and be supportive, constructive help. It's unique to Toastmasters. We get other organisations, and I think it was Rob that touched on it earlier on, and he said that, oh, you did very well, particularly drama or something, and I know Doreen is everybody says, oh, you did very well, and then when you turn away, it's, wasn't he shocking? But basically, feedback is very important, and that's what I'm going to go through tonight. Well, first of all, again, we had a lovely welcome at the door from Liam and Carmel's family, and thank them for that. Just one small issue, and I know it might sound petty, but I think it'd be important if there was a notice out at reception, because when I came in to the hotel, I haven't been here in a long time, and it was busy. So just to have a note, a Toastmasters meeting in such a room, just a small point, it just helps people get there on time. But a very nice welcome, as I said, from Liam and Carmel. Now, we started slightly late, but that's quite acceptable given the occasion, the auspicious occasion it was, and getting us all here on time. And we had a lovely opening by Carmel, a lovely opening. And she was very passionate, and she talked about her own passion for Toastmasters. And she said, which is very true, the importance of public speaking now, more important now than it ever was. And it is always so important. And she has put Trojan work into this occasion. For instance, we got notice about this, I'd say at least 2 months ago. So I think we should give a bullabus to Carmel. And getting her family involved, bring a full family occasion, so it's lovely to have them all involved. So then we had our president, and it was very nice and very welcoming and so on. That was very nice. Well done, Chris, there. And our Toastmaster, well, that's some performance. Well, we had great hand gestures, and we had everything, and we had this and that. And what I loved about Michael was he had lovely introductions, and he gave personal stories about the people that were coming up. And he also, at the end of every speech, he made a contribution relevant to what was touched. I think that was excellent. And as I said, he had the great body language. And so Michael is great at that. So he also, I think, he kept us on line. As I said, we started slightly late, but he brought us back on time. And he brought us back on time after tea break, which is not easy because a lot of us haven't met each other for a long, long time, and there's nothing like the cup of tea get that. And I suppose I forgot to mention about the cake, Carmel. It was excellent, such a lovely cake. Sorry, I couldn't eat it. I'm gluten free, so I can't. But it looked great, and I'd say it tasted excellent. So a bowl of bus for Michael Joyce. One small thing though, Michael, and I got a lecture a number of years ago, and I think it might be James Lennon, about handing over the gavel. It's just a small, important point. If you're handing over the gavel, what you do is you hold it here, so that you give it to the person that can shake hands. That's just a small point. So then to move on to our topics session. And I know it was later on in the occasion, but what I loved was, and I went up to Mary at the end, at the break, just to ask her what she said. I know, Siobhan, you said about it was important, the trees. We all love the trees in Toastmasters, but she said there was 4 points, and it was racking me brain. I didn't get the 4th, and in fact, even Mary herself couldn't remember what the 4th one was. So I'll give you them. I have to put on the glasses. Listening, thinking, organising and speaking. And that was excellent. I think it was a great introduction to topics. Now we had 4 topics and we had huge and great contributions from everybody. So compliment Mary again on an excellent performance. Well done. The other thing about them, they weren't too topical, because sometimes we hear everything on the radio during the week and we go into Toastmasters and we have it again. We have the same old stories up and down. So I always think topics shouldn't be topical. They should be different. Like, for instance, the lovely one about the smile. That's the kind of thing that makes us talk properly and gets us thinking. Well done, Mary. Well, bowl of bus for Mary there. I'm just going to go on to Jenny in terms of the word. And sure, of course, it was a brilliant word, auspicious. Excellent word, Mary, and well done. And well done in bringing in the extra uses of it at tea break. And also, you did a great job as well on the A counter, and you weren't too difficult or too tough on some of us that see it or use filler words. And well done to all those people who had no A at all. So a bowl of bus there for Jenny. So I'm getting on to the core of the evening, which was the speeches, and they were excellent. And the thing about the speeches were, they brought in all the various concepts of Toastmasters, what we're here to do, and they used it in so many different ways, like body language, storytelling, structure of speeches, and so on. And what I would love, and in fact, as James said about the manuals, sometimes we get great speeches, and wouldn't it be lovely to have a discussion straight away afterwards? Because we miss that discussion or question and so on. I know it would add to the time of the meeting and it might go a bit all over the place, but some of those speeches tonight, I would have loved to have made a comment or asked a question. Like, I recall myself 1 or 2 of the speeches I did, which there was a question and answer session. And one was, the topic, that children's allowance should be taxed. That was the topic I had to propose, and obviously it went down like a lead balloon with the group. But actually, the discussion afterwards was longer than my speech. So that just shows you, like, it's lovely to get a great speech, but we all have a comment. But we have to hold our comments, unfortunately. There's no opportunity in Toastmasters, apart from a few manuals. So that's just a general comment in relation to the speeches. So I'll go through the individuals. Is that okay? And just to recap for people, I'm not going to talk about the speeches themselves. I'm going to talk about the evaluators. And the first evaluator we had was Martin Ford, and he evaluated Doreen O'Keefe's speech. I thought this was a very positive evaluation by Martin. He outlined what he liked about it. He went through the various parts and talked about. I thought he made a very. If we were to pick somebody that was naturally reserved, I thought that was a great comment to take out of Doreen's speech. The other thing I liked about it was when he finished, he went back again and summarised what he liked about the speech, and he had very good time. So bula bus there for Martin. Our second speech was Pat Coakley's speech, and it was evaluated by Deirdre. And this was a very good evaluation, and really watched it closely, because I had the same point myself for a while, that Pat was looking at the floor and he wasn't. I thought it was part of the speech not to look at it. But your Pat, you can do that at times, can't you? But then she talked about how it changed when Pat opened up and really engaged with it, and it was a very perceptive point in the speech. And she also then referred to good points and the points she liked, and she also came up with a recommendation. And it's also always good to recommend. One of the things that Pat went slightly over, so I think that should have been included in the evaluation as well, Deirdre. But excellent, a very perceptive, incisive evaluation. So bula bus there for Deirdre. So then we had Siobhan to evaluate James Lenan's speech, and this was an excellent evaluation by Siobhan, and she a lovely start, the Carnegie Hall. You know, that was a great opening which James had used, and she went through what she liked about the speech and referred it throughout, and also made great recommendations. And I mean, 3 recommendations. Now, normally you would only get about 1, but she outlined 3, such as the figure 3, and also where's my notes again? I just can't get the third one there, but it was an excellent evaluation, Siobhan, and you also referred to the fact that James went slightly over in time. So I think it's important, if we do go over, that we should be told about it, because it's important for our next speech. So bula bus for Siobhan. And then Frances then evaluated Rob's speech. And again, she went through what she liked about it, and she talked about the pace and so on, and the presentation. And she also gave a recommendation in relation to the use of the floor, because it was very hard in that speech by Rob to pick anything, because it's such an excellent speech, and more use of the floor, and excellent time by Frances. So bula bus there for Frances. So we're coming near the end of the night, and it was a great meeting. And what I liked about it was, and as Carmel, and I didn't actually think about it, and I think President also mentioned the fact that the 3 of us never met before. But we're a bit like Macbeth. When will we meet again, though? That's the next point. And it was great to get us all together. And what was lovely was all the speeches and everything was so appropriate to Toastmasters. What's involved, body language, structure, and leadership, which Rob touched on it. And we all learned so much. Like, as people said, I wouldn't be doing today what I'm doing were it not for Toastmasters. I'm involved in community radio since I joined Toastmasters, and myself and my co-host won an award recently, and I said during that discussions, I wouldn't be in community radio were it not for Toastmasters. And it gives great structure to any person working, taking on a meeting, organising things and so on. And I go back again and I just compliment Carmel on a very appropriate occasion as we're coming out of COVID. We had the lovely cake. It's so important to celebrate because we lost so much celebrations during COVID, and it brought us all together. It was a great occasion, and it recapped, and it's always good in Toastmasters to go back to basics and learn what it's all about. And we got that all tonight. We have the celebration. We all got to meet. And when are we going to meet again? So thank you.
Thank you very much, Seamus. Now, before I hand back to the President, I just want to say a big congratulations to you, Carmel. Well done. And Seamus is right. I mean, this there must have been a serious amount of work put in. We saw just the outline of it, or when you were like, but there was, as Seamus said, we were getting the texts 2 months ago and 3 months ago. I'm delighted for you. I'm honoured that you've asked me to be Toastmaster on the night. I'm thrilled. I remember your first speech on the pound of sugar way back. I still remember, so that's a sure sign you're up there in lights. And well done, Carmel. I'm absolutely delighted for you. And now I'd like to call on our President to begin wrapping up the proceedings. Thank you. Is he watching?
Thank you very much, Mike. I don't know about you, but I have heartily enjoyed this evening's meeting, and so I'd like to thank you all for your attendance. One of the things that I find most gratifying about Toastmasters is watching people grow into themselves, and I can find no better example than our meeting coordinator this evening, Carmel. In taking on the presidency of Loughrea Toastmasters and being area director this year, you've stepped on board a rocket ship. You're zooming to the moon. So, congratulations, Carmel, on a very well-run meeting this evening. I'd like to thank all of our club officers, our meeting officers this evening. Thank you all for your time and support. Without your assistance, meetings like this don't happen. You've all done a fine job of giving us much food for thought. To all of our Toastmasters here this evening, be you novice or expert, I hope you leave this meeting having been educated, entertained, and perhaps enthused to spread the word about what Toastmasters has to offer. So with that, I'll call this meeting to a close.
Well, like Chris has said, we all know meetings don't just happen. This meeting has run like clockwork, and that I owe my personal thanks to all the officers and people who took on roles tonight. I really appreciate your commitment and time to this event. The essence behind this goes back to what matters most. And what matters most is people and connection. Because when we meet and we connect, it just becomes that little bit sweeter. Thank you and good evening, everybody.